I got a bad feeling about doing this podcast.
My wife is taking a picture of Chris Gore's and I don't know how the show went so off the rails.
I loved all the marketing for the Star Wars prequels.
I didn't know it was a movie. I thought it was toys.
And you were a slave boy.
He asked me to come up and see his Han.
Are you an angel?
I have boobs, you know.
Kids play with Star Wars toys. And make them... It's an all-new PodCRASH live from Star Wars Celebration in Orlando. Welcome to the show. This is PodCRASH. I am that Chris Gore. This is the show where you get to hear me as a guest on a different podcast every week. It gives you the opportunity to discover new podcasts. It gives me a chance to talk about a variety of topics. This week, I am crashing a podcast called Star Wars Action Figure News. Yeah, we're going to talk about Star Wars. We're going to talk about action figures. But first, I need to tell you that I've done podcasts from different events. I've done podcasts where I've recorded from a cab. I've done podcasts recorded from hotel rooms in various parts of the world. I've done podcasts live at events like Dragon Con in Atlanta, which was last week. This week, I am recording this podcast from my bed. I am really sick, which explains why we've did sort of an intermittent release schedule for pod. Usually it's once a week, an episode of PodCRASH. And if you look at a monthly basis, we put out 4 or 5 episodes with like a bonus episode every month. But this week didn't get to it because I was bedridden and still am bedridden. I'm coughing up phlegm that is as thick as chewing gum, if that gives you any indication of how sick I am. And I apologize in advance for my voice, or if I happen to sneeze or you hear stuff that's gross. I'll cut out the gross stuff, but I might actually sneeze, but I'm just going to keep going because I've got to get an episode of PodCRASH out. And I must, I don't get sick too often, maybe once a year, and I'll get a cold, whatever. This is the sickest I've been since in 2004. I actually had walking pneumonia that where I had pneumonia and I just kept working, and I was actually producing the film My Big Fat Independent Movie at the time, and both myself and the director Philip Zlotarinsky, we both came down with this same flu. My doctor tells me my lung capacity is actually less because of that pneumonia and because I waited for weeks to take care of it. So I'm actually in bed sick. And look, I'm drinking lots of fluids. Please hold your advice. By the time you send it to me, I should be over this thing, but I really needed to get a podcast out. So apologies aside, forget the boring details. I did back-to-back trips to Star Wars Celebration and Dragon Con in Atlanta. And all I can say is this: it did take a toll on me. It did take a toll. But a couple things. Actually, let's get in some plugs. A couple of plugs. I am going to be doing PodCRASH live at IO West on Saturday, September 22nd. It's at 8:00 p.m. at IO West. That's 6366 Hollywood Boulevard. You can get tickets at ioimprov.com/west. I'm going to be crashing a podcast called Proudly Resents, hosted by Adam Spiegelman. You've heard me on his podcast a couple times. We're going to be talking about the movie Heart Beeps with Andy Kaufman. It's going to be amazing. Some incredible special guests. I can't announce them, but some incredible special guests. So please come to our second live PodCRASH at IO West. That's Saturday, September 22nd. ioimprov.com/west. Also, I've told you about this PodCRASH video contest. Just sing the PodCRASH theme song, and then make sure that you also say there's too many podcasts. You can email the video to podcrashwiththatchrisgore@gmail.com with the subject line PodCRASH TV. And we have a YouTube channel. You can go to youtube.com/PodCRASH TV, and our site now. We have podcrash.net, which is our Tumblr, which was also gives you all kinds of inside information about every episode of the show, Easter eggs, stuff. That at the end, there's Easter eggs on this show if you listen to the very end of the show. But if you listen to the end, you hear some audio clip. It's usually from the end of a movie, and if you can't figure out what the movie is, we reveal it on our Tumblr. So if you can't get enough of me inside your ears, I'm I'm going to have to stop every once in a while and do that. But also I should let you know that you can send us letters, and I'm going to respond to the first that we've got. Yes, you can email the show at podcrashwiththatchrisgore@gmail.com. This letter comes from Andrew McLennan, asks, why are you so damn sexy? You're kind of pandering with that question, Andrew, I got to say. Kind of pandering. I'll say I think I'm sexy because I don't care. Because I think confidence is sexy, and I think well, you know what? Maybe I'm not sexy. Wait a sec. Now I'm backtracking. I'm definitely not sexy now sitting in bed. I can tell you that. Unshowered, just filthy tissues, wadded up tissues thrown at the side of the bed, cast aside because they're filled with chewing gum thick phlegm. So yeah. All right. Here's another question. So thank you, Andrew, for your question. Sexy. I think confidence is sexy. I don't think I really have that right now, but thank you for asking that. I think you meant that as a compliment. Okay. Stephen Romano asks, who would win in a fight, Abe Lincoln or George Washington? Oh man, I don't know. Two of the toughies as president. I don't think we'll ever find out. If I had to pick one, if I had to pick a favorite, I'm thinking Abe. I think he had the best facial hair. I really think, but I don't know. George Washington had wooden teeth. Although wooden teeth are likely to break if you use them in your biting. All right. So, Stephen Romano, thank you for your question. I don't know why you're asking me that question. Let's see. Another question here from Brett Gorney. He says, I want Chris Gore to give me a selection of TV drama series that are new or relatively new. One of my favorites I just finished was Life Unexpected. So Brett Gorney, look, you got to go with the favorites. You got to go with Mad Men, Breaking Bad, Walking Dead. Why are you not watching these shows? Newsroom is a current favorite now on HBO if you have HBO Go. Not currently on DVD, but you can check that one out. I've been checking out a lot of web series. Two web series I would recommend now are the one with Jerry Seinfeld that's on Crackle.com, which is Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I think that's the name of it. But it's basically Jerry Seinfeld sitting around talking to other comedians while they drink coffee. And the Alec Baldwin one is absolutely hysterical. There's also the Enjoy It series with Stephen Brody Stevens, which is on HBO Go. I don't know if that's on HBO.com, but HBO Go has just started a series of digital comedy shorts. And Brody Stevens, hysterical if you're a fan of his comedy. He's amazing. He's insanely good comedian. So check out his web series and also check out his podcast, which I believe is, just look up Brody Stevens. All right, just Google him, look that up. And the HBO series is produced by Zach Galifianakis. Let's see some other questions here. Dan is just Dan at dankoprod.com says, love you, Chris, but aren't you way too old to be rocking that hairstyle? Dan from Seminole, Florida. I don't know. I really don't care. You know what? And I think that not caring what you think, Dan, might make me sexy, actually, because I think confidence is sexy. To reference our first question by Andrew. Thank you for your questions. Some of them sucked. I think, Dan, your question kind of sucked. I think, you know what? We're kind of trapped with the hairstyle in the era that I think we grew up. And I've never been, true. I have never been with the trend. I'm either behind or maybe I was forward thinking. I have never, whatever the trend is in anything, whether it be fashion, hairstyle, whatever, I have never been there. I have never been there when everybody else is. I've always gone to the beat of my own drum. It's not like I have some rock and roll hairstyle. It's just that this is what I'm stuck with. And I don't know. I'll say this. My hair looks better erect than it does down after I wash it. Really uninteresting. Why are you guys even listening to this now? Let's get to this week's crash. Star Wars action figure news. Oh, and if you want to ask a good question, because if someone asks a good question, I will respond to the good question. PodCRASH@chrisgore@gmail.com. Okay. Star Wars action figure news is a podcast that is wholly dedicated to Star Wars toys and Star Wars fandom. I met the people behind the podcast, Arnie and Marjorie Carvalho. They are a husband and wife team. They put together this podcast. It was an absolute joy to record this podcast with them, which actually was recorded live from the con floor at the Star Wars Celebration 6 in Orlando, Florida, just a few weeks ago. And normally the show focuses on Star Wars merchandise and whatnot, but we talked about, everything from like how Star Wars toys affected us when we were kids, the impact that Star Wars had on our lives, as it has, I'm sure, impacted a lot of you. I actually happen to think that everybody has an epiphany movie. It's a movie that makes you fall in love with the movies. Star Wars was my gateway movie, and a few more as well. I think that just reinforce my love of all things film. So also, Arnie actually was part of our, which you'll hear very soon, our San Diego Comic-Con live podcast, which we have not posted for technical reasons, but that'll be in the coming weeks. Arnie also does a podcast called Marvelicious Toys. Anyways, let's get right to it. It's a great conversation about all things Star Wars, and you can kind of hear it's a little noisy in the background a little bit because we're at a con. We're at Star Wars Celebration 6, which was a blast. So let's get right to it. Star Wars Action Figure News, Episode 1. Well, I mean, this is just clip 1.
Tell us, you were talking about how it was an epiphany. Did you see Star Wars in theaters in '77?
Yeah, actually, I did. I mean, I was a little kid, and I remember seeing the trailers. The trailers for the original Star Wars, and in fact, the original trilogy trailers are really weird. They didn't really figure out how to do trailers until maybe Return of the Jedi. But they were just bizarre, and I remember seeing the trailers for Star Wars and saying, oh my God, they have the Wolfman. Because there's a shot of Chewbacca that's featured in the trailer, and I thought, like, well, it has spaceships and aliens and monsters. It has monsters. I was really into monsters as a kid. So much so that I actually quit Cub Scouts. I was in Cub Scouts for not a very long time because there was Monster Week at the movies that they would have. I grew up in Detroit, and they had a thing called the 4 o'clock movie, which also got changed to the 4:30 movie. And they would show like Godzilla Week or Monster Week, and I quit Cub Scouts because, this kind of conflicts with Monster Week. I don't care about making a little car or wooden pencil holder. I'm just gonna quit and do that. So then I saw the trailers, and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, Star Wars opened in a very few theaters. I mean, at the time, the way they released movies back then was they would open them in limited theaters, and then it's not like today, it's like a date. Like, a movie opens all on the same day. Star Wars opened in, I think it was 10 theaters. And I saw it at the Americana in Detroit, Michigan. And I saw it the Friday or the Saturday after it opened. So it opened on a Wednesday, and I was there that weekend. It changed my life. I saw it as a kid. Now, when did you see Star Wars? Everyone has, their moment they saw the original.
Well, I remember seeing Star Wars when I was little. My mom was a big sci-fi nerd, and that's probably why I'm like I am now. Love Godzilla, love Japanese monster movies, love Star Wars. My first real memory is being excited to see Return of the Jedi. And I was just a little girl. I was almost 10, and we were in line at the Fox Theater in Springfield, Illinois, by the toy store. And in a funny, weird coincidence, he was in the same line, not far from me, and we ended up getting married years later. So, I mean, because he's like, yeah, that guy was dressed as Darth Vader. And I'm like, yeah, I remember him, and I was terrified. He's like, I was too. And we were both by the toy store, and we didn't know each other. And it's just this weird coincidence. And we live in a town of 150,000 people, so it's kind of weird that we ended up in the same line, kind of in the same area, and then we ended up married.
What would have been really funny is if you guys met and you were a slave boy, and you said to her, are you an angel?
That's funny.
That would have been really funny because they're around the same age, right?
I saw A New Hope in '77, but I was too young to remember it. My parents would just take me to movies. My first memory is really seeing Empire in '80 when it came out, just again as an afternoon thing with my parents. But before that, I bought all the toys. I was really into the toys because I remember being at a grocery store and seeing a Greedo figure, and I was into Spacemen as a little kid, and I wanted the little green man, the quintessential little green man. And then I started having logo recognition, and I'd buy all the Star Wars figures. And so when Empire came out, my parents were like, "He likes this." I'm like, "What is this?" I didn't know it was a movie. I thought it was toys. Did you buy much as a kid?
Yes. I was one of the people that bought that early bird kit. Do you remember the early bird kit? Which was, they didn't realize that Star Wars would be such a phenomenon. And I think George Lucas figured that. I mean, he forfeited a bunch of money to hold on to the sequel rights and the merchandising rights. I mean, that's widely known. And they were unprepared. You know, it really takes like 18 months of production for an action figure. You know, you've got the design, it goes overseas, it's, you know, packaged and put together and then shipped into stores. It physically takes a lot of time. So they did not anticipate the popularity, and they sold basically a coupon. So for Christmas, in 1977, you would receive a piece of paper saying, mail in this coupon, and in about 6 months, you'll get your action figures. And they've actually now done a reproduction of that early bird kit, which I purchased. I don't even think I filled out, because a lot of people are like, I'd like to have the coupon. I don't want to fill it out. I don't want to, you know. So it's really, I mean, yes, I did have so many Star Wars toys. And what I love about Star Wars toys is that they're the kind of toys that you'd go to a yard sale, right? Kids play with Star Wars toys. They don't, I mean, they're muddy. You'd always see them and, like, they're dirty. Why? Because kids played with them. I feel today there's, like, too much of a, you know, preserving your toy and putting it in, like, some case and bagging it and making it, you know, like I don't care. Rip it open, play with it, play with your Star Wars toys. I mean, and that's what I think people did. I mean, I certainly did when I was a kid.
Yeah, I'm sure that if someone did an archaeological excavation of my backyard, there would be all kinds of Star Wars toys, Matchbox toys. But yeah, I mean, we played with them. I remember my brother had the Falcon, and we would play with that. And I remember distinctly playing Star Wars on the playground at school, and we did A New Hope. And I remember Joe Cleverton was Han Solo. And I know that's really odd, and I don't know where he is at this day and time anymore. But I remember that on the Jungle Gym, and we pretended like we were swinging across the Death Star bridge. And I remember playing with my brother's figures, and we jammed everyone in where the Falcon opened up, and we'd pretend like it was flying, and we'd mix the G.I. Joe and the He-Man with it, too. That's what you did back then.
Well, first of all, that's cool. And secondly, a girl into Star Wars, you know, makes her 50% hotter. So mathematically, it's just, you know, mathematically the odds, girls are always north of 100%. I mean, it's just, there's something about that, having that connection. You know what I mean? There we go. Wow.
Showing the tattoo.
Oh, I got to take a picture of that tattoo. That is awesome. Yeah, so Marjorie actually has a Star Wars tattoo right on her calf. It's like it is such a cute tattoo that I will tweet a picture of it from @PodCRASH Show, our Twitter. But I love Star Wars tattoos. I don't know. I actually considered getting a Darth Vader tattoo. I never actually did it, and now I'm kind of glad that I did. But I don't have any tattoos actually. But my favorite tattoo I saw at Star Wars Celebration, this girl had basically Han Solo's blaster on her upper thigh, and it was pointed like as if it was strapped to her leg. She had this Star Wars tattoo, and all it said was "Han shot first." Amazing Star Wars tattoo. I mean, look. I haven't gotten it. If I got a Star Wars tattoo, it would probably be her. But then I'd just be copying her. I can't copy her tattoo. All right, back to Star Wars action figure news. The Dark Side Grotto. Did you hear about this party?
We heard about it last night, yeah.
Oh, it was amazing. There were about 50 women there dressed as Slave Leia, myself included. I was dressed as Slave Leia for fun. I wore it under my clothes, and I thought, well, if it's exciting, I'll change, and I did. What was really cool was they had a lot of exotic dancers doing, like, they had, like, what are those girls, the Twi'leks, those girls that have the weird tentacles out of their head.
Guys, sorry, they're called Leku.
Oh my God, I blew that. Twi'lek,
and you're working for StarWars.com.
Wait, no, Twi'lek is the name of one of the girl dancers in Jabba's. No,
the Twi'lek is the species. Ula is the girl. Leku are the tentacles.
Oh my God, this is why they invented Wikipedia.com, which I highly recommend that site. I need to get my Star Wars facts straight. Anyways, so they had dancers that were dressed up Star Wars exotic dances. It wasn't nude or anything, but it was all you needed. And what was really fun was they had created, I don't have one now, but they had these like dollar bills that were like imperial dollar bills with Darth Vader's face on it. It had that like Arabic lettering, and I got a couple of those. Some people stuffed those in my pants.
That is awesome. See, we were getting text messages because we went out last night and we're having a few too many beers. Buy one, get one free on Guinness is not a good thing. I just want to say that. And we were getting texts as we were leaving, hey, there's half-naked people at the Rosen. You need to come on over.
we didn't know which people, so that could either be a really good thing or a really bad thing. Also, which half?
It ended up being a very good thing. Trust me.
So what have you had time to really experience the con besides just covering it?
I actually have. I mean, I've been here doing reports. We did a Star Wars spelling bee at the Wikipedia booth. We did a report on the cars. I did a whole thing with the slave Leias where I was dressed as Man Leia. Because I have a sense of humor about myself. And I also think that, what we've seen is a lot of progress, I think, with women over the last few decades. I'm a father myself. My daughter's a huge fan of Star Wars and fan of just all things genre. And it's just great to see how there's been progress in so many areas, and also in the area of geekdom. Geekdom used to be, I think we remember the dark times, when it was basically, it was a boys' club. I mean, being a fan of anything geeky was a boys' club. In fact, you would spot someone at a comic convention, a girl, and you go it'd be like a Bigfoot sighting. It'd be like, oh wait, she's here on purpose. Wait, she's buying comics, and then at least there'd be an opening to talk to a girl. So you've really seen a huge shift in that arena, which is a good thing. So I think that actually, I kind of want to take a little bit of that back. Hey, if the girls can come here, then I can dress as Man Leia.
I think you're kind of right about that. I have often been the only girl in the conventions, or, very few girls, and quite often I have to remind the gaggle of guys that are around, hey, mixed company, I have boobs, you're talking to a girl here. But it is a great place. I will say, if I was single, I probably could go home with somebody, because I've had nothing but come-ons for this entire convention.
I like what you said about I have boobs.
I like that too. I think boobs are pretty great. I like mine.
But you're right about that. It's like it used to be, the cliche was, you're geeky at a convention, and then it'd be like the tolerant girlfriend or the tolerant wife rolling the eyes. Oh, he's into Star Wars. No longer. Never again.
Okay, I want to point out, though, we knew each other, and he was kind of hiding his Star Wars fandom from me. Just
literally in a closet.
Why did you do that?
Although I did have a life-size Han and Carbonite that didn't fit in the closet.
But wait, here's what he did to me. He's so funny. When we were kind of hanging out and just dating, and you try and get the girl up to your room and everything, he asked me to come up and see his Han, which was in his bedroom at the time.
That's amazing. There's a great come on. I want to show you my Han. Yeah, so this Dark Side Grotto party at Star Wars Celebration was intense. It was all these girls dressed in Slave Leia outfits. I dressed in one as well. I'm going to get to that story. It's an upcoming podcast. You're going to hear why I have this Slave Leia outfit. In any case, the Dark Side Grotto party was just insane. All these girls dressed up as they were dressed up as the dancers from Jabba's palace. They were dressed up in Slave Leia outfits, all dancing at this very dark club. It was just a Star Wars themed club. They had fake Star Wars money, people dressed in costume, people not dressed in costume, everybody drunk. I will say that, and that's the one thing I happen to really love about Star Wars fans. They do know how to party. They actually do know how to party, and there's nothing, I've said it many times, but there's nothing sexier than a woman who loves Star Wars. All right, back to Star Wars action figure news.
But you said you are a father of a daughter. How would you feel if your daughter was parading around in a Slave Leia outfit and then went up on a panel and some guy came out and said he'd like to stick his in her?
Well, I mean, first of all, she's got a good sense of humor. Look, I'm her dad. She tolerates me. Whatever she wants to do, she's not into that. She's actually she's a big fan of H.R. Giger, the illustrator. She likes the original Alien movies. So I don't know. She's like a geek, but I feel like geek sort of represents this whole buffet of stuff. I mean, you can be into so many things. I mean, Star Wars. I mean, I'm a huge Batman fan. Sort of Batman and Star Wars, zombies. That whole thing is all sort of mixed into. I mean, we all have things that they kind of connect. This is what connects us and binds us. Is our love of not just Star Wars, but all things geek. You know what? I got a bad feeling about doing this podcast. I don't know what's going on. I knew that it would go off the rails when I sat down. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I influenced you to go bad. I got a bad feeling about this.
All right, bringing it back. George Lucas.
This is why you're a good host. I cannot host a podcast, but I can be a guest on a podcast because then you can rein me back in. So thank you for that.
George Lucas was here yesterday. Did you have any interaction or...
I had zero interaction with George Lucas, but he was walking around here. I know he stopped by a booth with the Belgians. Have you seen the Belgians put together these insane set reproductions? They have like a full back-to-tank with FX7 and 2B1, the medical droid, and like in the interior of the Millennium Falcon, you know, with the hologram, the holochess. I don't know exactly the name for that.
Holochess.
Holochess. Where's Wikipedia when we need it? And he came and signed part of that set. He signed one of the cars in the car display, the Star Wars car display. So George was here. I did, dressed as Man Leia, sit on a George Lucas impersonator's lap, which was, he was in the middle of all the slave Leias. I just sat right in his lap. It was really funny because he had the most disgusted look on his face. He was really unhappy, George. But what's funny is we're all wearing Star Wars T-shirts as we sit here doing this podcast, and we're surrounded by an audience of enthusiastic. They're pretty much just standing there, actually. They're not clapping or doing anything. Yeah, all right, finally, guys, thanks. You know, I mean, like, everyone's wearing T-shirts. Why aren't plaid shirts more popular? One would think that a Star Wars-themed plaid shirt, there is one?
There's a guy in plaid right there.
But it's not Star Wars themed.
No.
He's just not fashionable.
It would be so cool if in the plaid, you know, sort of thread, and the sort of, if you looked really close, it was a bunch of crossed lightsabers. Why not? Folks, every time I think of some weird Star Wars merchandise that should exist, it ends up existing in a very short time. I saw someone that had it was a stroller with speeder bikes, made of speeder bikes. Another guy made an R2-D2 stroller it was part of that R2 Builders Club. It's amazing. It's like the fans have come up with merch ideas that don't exist, and they've just made them themselves.
Well, you know, you mentioned the plaid. Actually, Kotobukiya, which is a company down there, Japanese, they have a lot of American stuff, but they have some Japanese stuff that they don't have the license to sell here. They have a nice set of ties, and they look just like your standard, you know, paisley ties or whatever. There's one that looks like Starburst. You get close up, and it is the crossed lightsabers that they have over there. They have just the stripes, but you get in real close, the stripes are made of Imperial symbols and that kind of thing.
Well, I got to show you something that I made that I'm pretty proud of. I took a 12-inch Han Solo frozen in carbonite, which you see here. So I had two of them. I took a Dremel and I cut Han Solo out of it. I cut the little hands out, and I took a life cast that was made of my face when I was like 20 years old, and I put it inside the Han in carbonite.
That is weird.
And I sculpted the hands in. It looks like a little baby. It's like my face in carbonite. Is that the strangest thing you've ever seen?
It kind of looks like a fetus.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, I definitely get a 2001, end of 2001 vibe off that pic.
Yes, it is a little bizarre, folks. It's my face in carbonite made from a hot... But I do love that. It's like, I think Star Wars, and this is what George Lucas, I know that he encourages creativity among fans. It's weird, like a fan will start some sort of cool, creative thing that they've come up with. And then he'll look at that and go, oh, cool, like we should start making that. And then he'll get the company involved. They're not litigious like Disney. Other companies are litigious. George encourages it, and basically, because if you make something that's Star Wars, he pretty much owns it. I mean, legally, he could go after you, but why waste that energy? Why create that negativity? What's great about Lucasfilm is they embrace it and say, well, let's just do it officially. You can say now it's official Lucasfilm. Kick us back a few bucks, and we'll help you promote it. So he really has the right idea. I mean, I think that Lucasfilm has to be perhaps the most fan-friendly organization. I mean, is the most fan-friendly. I can't think of anything comparable. Can you?
Trying to think about them. You know, in certain ways, I agree with you and think that no. But in other ways, you got to think, like, you look at the 501st, a fan organization that rose up. But think about all Lucasfilm gets out of that. Think about that parade where, well, if it wasn't for this 501st that they silently endorsed and allowed to rise up, where would all those parade people in costumes have come from? They would have had to make it. So it definitely is a two-way street where they find ways to benefit and keep the thing going, like this celebration. I mean, in certain ways, it's giving back. George came. This is his third celebration. He didn't have to come here again. It was unannounced. It was not officially done. It wasn't done to sell tickets. He didn't have to show up. He showed up anyway, and that's a really nice thing. And thinking about other fandoms, I think because Star Trek didn't do that, that's part of the reason why Star Trek isn't quite around as much anymore.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are Star Trek conventions. There was one recently in Las Vegas where they got together, the Captains, and that's a great documentary, actually. I don't know if you've seen that documentary, The Captains.
Netflix Q, but no.
Netflix Q, you will enjoy it. I mean, you will. I mean, there are Star Wars and Star Trek fans. If I have to pick one, I'm a Star Wars fan all the way because Star Trek to me can get a little convoluted. Like they're making up science to make it seem like it's accurate, and it's gobbledygook, you know. At some point, what I love about Star Wars is just all about the creativity and the adventure and whatnot. I have to say, I've been a long-time fan of both Star Trek and Star Wars. Obviously Star Trek I saw before Star Wars, and fell in love with that as an ongoing. I'm talking about the original series, you know, the OS, TOS. Is that what they call it? TOS. Anyways, fan of the Star Trek original series, but when Star Wars came along, I just like the fact that it didn't take itself as seriously as Star Trek. I think sometimes the fans of Star Trek can ruin it for me by actually just taking it so seriously that they try to explain the science, when I like to very conveniently point out, all of this is made up. This is all completely made up. So some of this, the science in Star Trek is theoretical, but I think it's just when Star Trek is good, it's just great. It's just great adventure fiction, and makes us all reach for the stars. I just wish that all the cool stuff that existed in Star Trek and Star Wars was actually real. What's funny is that pretty much tricorders already exist. I mean, look, what's Foursquare or Google Maps? That's a tricorder. Your iPhone is practically a tricorder. I mean, I saw a thing recently where they showed that they actually made what is kind of like a sort of it's like a land speeder, basically like a real land speeder or speeder bike from Return of the Jedi. They've actually made that. So the only thing is lightsaber. I don't know how they would actually make a lightsaber. All right, back to Star Wars action figure news. One of the coolest things that I saw here was a live reading of a thing called Smuggler's Gambit that was Kyle Newman. Kyle Newman, who directed Fanboys, created a radio play in the style of the old Star Wars radio plays. Those ones they did, Star Wars The Empire Strikes Back. And those things were like 6-9 hours long. I mean, it was like all the sort of in between. And it's basically the long drawn out version of the Star Wars stories at that point. And he recreated it with sound effects. I felt like I watched it. I actually saw that episode. And it takes place Smuggler's Gambit, which I think the video is actually on StarWars.com. You can actually check out Smuggler's Gambit. It's what happens in the days after the Death Star blew up. And they know they need to relocate, so it's Han Solo with a group of rebels looking for a new base, but he's not quite committed to the rebels yet. It's like, I'm stuck. Like, basically, I'm a wanted man from the Empire because of what I did, so I can't show my face anywhere. I'm kind of forced to work with the rebels now. So he's looking for a new base for the rebels to relocate. It's really good. Luke is in it. There's a little appearance by Boba Fett, and the voice acting is amazing. The guy who did Han Solo, incredible. You got to check that out on StarWars.com.
Absolutely, and I think they used a lot of the Clone Wars voice actors for that, and I think James Arnold Taylor, who does so many voices, he actually did Ron Howard in Arrested Development when Ron Howard wasn't available and things like that, and he's really good at that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it was amazing, but that's what's cool about coming to something like Celebration. I've come to all of the celebrations. I was at 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't get to 5, unfortunately. I didn't get to the last one here in Orlando, but I was at, and I'm just happy to be here at this one, but I was at the first one in Denver. Did you go to that?
No, that's the one we missed, and I was about to ask, what was that one like for you?
Well, it was the beginning, so to speak. It was Star Wars Celebration 1, the beginning.
I picture it like Woodstock. I hear about mud. I hear about rains. I see documentaries of Woodstock. That's what I picture with Star Wars fans.
Oh, it's very close to that. I like to say that the environment, the whole Denver, the Colorado area was cosplaying as Dagobah. Because it was so rainy and muddy. But I remember, and they had it all take place in these sort of aircraft or air. There was like hangars. There are these hangars for aircraft, and they sort of turn them into these presentation areas. It was muddy, it was miserable, but people were so into it. It was so much this presence and fun and just like enthusiasm, and episode 1 had not yet opened. We were seeing trailers and more footage. They showed the Tone Poem trailers. I don't know if you remember the Tone Poem trailers. I loved those. I thought those are amazing. And I loved all the marketing for the Star Wars prequels. I won't say that I loved every moment of the prequels. I've talked about that at length. But the marketing for those films is incredible. I mean, it just like, you got you pumped. Even when you thought, well, Star Wars Episode 1 was not so great. But Episode 2, have you seen the trailers? So what was cool was Anthony Daniels was walking around just like saying, he was out walking around in the rain, thanking people for coming to Celebration, just cheering people up, posing for photographs in the rain. He was a trooper.
Well, I think the music is playing us off, Chris, but I want to thank you for taking some time out of your con to crash this podcast.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm glad I finally got to meet you.
Great to meet you, and just thank you for having me on the podcast. If you like what I do, you can follow me at that Chris Gore, chrisgore.com, or you can listen to my podcast, PodCRASH. Follow that one at PodCRASH Show, or you can go to podcrash.net. And just thank you so much. I mean, I'm a big fan. If you ever want me back on the show, I'd love to do it. I love what you're doing with the podcast, and I feel like we played with our toys the same. I mean, you make the noises. Like having that X-Wing and TIE Fighter when you were a kid. How many times did you play with that, and make the? I mean.
I remember having the big wheel, and I take the R2-D2 and put it on the back, so it was like at the back of my X-Wing.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of inspired, especially if you see those Star Wars cars. Those guys did kind of a big version of the big wheel. But, yeah, no, it's just to come here, I feel like when I come to things like this, whether it's Comic-Con or Phoenix Comic-Con or all that, it's like I found my tribe. These are my people. These are the people that I love to hang out with, and which is why I'm losing my voice now on the 4th day of Celebration, and I'll be back for Celebration 7, wherever it is. I hope you will be too. All right, that's it for this week's Crash on Star Wars action figure news. I really want to thank Arnie and Marjorie Carvalho. They were just an amazing couple. It was a joy to be on their podcast. It just was cut too short. Obviously, I could have talked for hours with them. And, as you know, with every episode of PodCRASH, you're only hearing the highlights. To hear the entire episode, you can actually check out their website. It's swactionnews.com. You can follow them on Twitter at swactionnews. And you can like them on Facebook. Right. And also he's got check out their other podcasts, Marvelicious Toys. And they do this really cool thing. Arnie and Marjorie put together. It's a video version of the podcast. So you hear us reference a lot of things during the show. And when you watch the video version of it, you'll actually see photographs of the things that we referenced during the show. I talk about some crafting where I make this My Face in Carbonite thing. And there's pictures of that on my Facebook and on their podcast. So it was a joy to be on there. I'm still in bed. This is weird. I'm doing a podcast from my bed, and I am exhausted. And I'm probably gonna go back to sleep. So again, apologies this week for this episode being late, and just for my voice. I didn't sneeze in the entire time. I'm feeling pretty good about this. Maybe I'm actually getting better. All right, so that's it. You can follow me on Twitter at that Chris Gore. You can follow the show at PodCRASH Show. Like us on Facebook.com/PodCRASH. Go to iTunes. Give us a 5-star review if you feel we deserve it. I think we do. And as I am fond of saying, and as you will hear in several episodes of the Star Wars films, let's get out of here.
There it is. All right, Wedge, go for the power regulator on the North Tower.
Copy, Gold Leader. I'm already on my way out.
Move the fleet away from the Death Star.
if you're still listening to this, you're probably a lot like me. You're the kind of person who stays to the end of every Star Wars movie and watches all of the credits. Even the ones where people worked on the digital effects and there's like just giant blocks of tiny people's names. I like to read all of those. If you're the kind of person who does that, then we're a lot alike. I like you. For that, you shall be rewarded. Send a self-addressed stamped envelope to PodCRASH with that Chris Gore, 5042 Wilshire Boulevard, PMB 1500, Los Angeles, California 90036. I will return the self-addressed stamped envelope with a surprise. And guess what? If you're still listening, here's a bonus piece of audio just for you. Later.
My wife is taking a picture of Chris Gore's and I don't know why or how this show went so off the rails.
It's a temporary tattoo, but it's an Ewok tattoo, and I think you got some of my coin slot on your picture. I apologize for that.
It's okay. You know what though? I can sell this to TMZ now, right?
Well, it's unfortunately Harry Coin Slot. And wait, that's going to be my new podcast, Harry Coin Slot. HarryCoinslot.com. Follow us on Twitter at Harry Coin Slot.
It is now taken and available for $10,000.
Right. Someone is squatting on Harry Coin Slot. You.